Pursuant to Section 84-1411 of the Nebraska statutes, notice of this meeting was given on June 17, 2016. The meeting will convene at 6:30 p.m. and visitors may obtain a request to be heard form from staff for any presentation they may have for the meeting. In accordance with policy, the request to be heard forms must be submitted to the Secretary within the first 5 minutes of the board meeting in order to be heard at this meeting. Agenda items are subject to reordering at the discretion of the board president. Please attend the entire meeting to ensure you're able to hear any discussion. Pursuant to Section 84-1411 of the Nebraska statutes, the next meeting of the Board of Education of Douglas County School District 0001 will be a workshop held on Monday, July 11th, 2016 at 6 p.m. Monday, July 11th, 2016 at 6 p.m. And the next regular meeting of the Board of Education of Douglas County School District 0001 and the Board of Educational Service Unit Number 19 will be held on Monday, July 18th, 2016 at 6:30 p.m. in the board meeting room of the Teacher Administrative Center, 3215 Cummings Street. The agenda will be kept current and available for public inspection in the office of the Secretary of the Board of Education at the Administrative Building during regular working hours. Pursuant to Section 84-1412 of the Nebraska statutes, the public is hereby informed that a current copy of the Nebraska Open Meetings Act is posted in the board meeting room on the north wall. Would you please stand at this time and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance?
We are going to start off with the OPS vision and mission. Our vision, every student, every day, prepared for success. And the mission, Omaha Public Schools prepares all students to excel in college, career, and life.
Roll call, please, Mr. Ray.
Fay.
Here.
Godding.
Here.
America.
Present.
Scanlon.
Present.
Snow. Underwood.
Here.
Vargas.
Here.
Wayne. Williams.
Present.
7 present.
Okay, I've not heard from Mr. Wayne or Mr. Snow, but at this time I would entertain a motion to excuse them.
I move to excuse Mr. Wayne and Mr. Snow.
So motion by Mrs. Fay, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Vargas. Roll call, please.
Fay.
Aye.
Godding.
Aye.
America.
Aye.
Scanlon.
No.
Underwood.
Aye.
Williams.
No.
I forgot somebody.
Aye.
Thank you. 7 aye.
No, that's not
6
right.
aye. Sorry, I'm thrown off completely, Ms. Vargas. Sorry. 6 aye.
No, that's not right either, but I think it's 5 aye.
5 aye. Thank you.
All right, motion carries. With that, we're going to move on to the school spotlight, and I'll call Mrs. Monique Farmer to the podium.
Thank you, Madam President, Superintendent, members of the board. The spotlight for this evening is on Grace Erickson in Omaha North High School Junior. Grace was selected to the Nebraska School Activities Association Student Advisory Committee for the 2016-2017 school year. This will be the first year for this new program, and the purpose of the committee is to serve as a liaison between students, administrators, and the NSAA staff and board of directors. Out of more than 80 impressive applicants, only 12 juniors and seniors were selected to be on this committee, including Grace Erickson. The selection process was focused on the representation of gender, school classification, minority representation, and participation in interscholastic athletic activities. We congratulate Grace Erickson for being selected to represent the district, and we welcome this evening Grace and Omaha North High School Principal, Mr. Gene Haynes.
Thank you, Mr. Evans, Superintendent of Schools, members of the Board of Education.
It is indeed a pleasure to support this young lady and her parents for an excellent job as she represents the eastern part of the state of Nebraska in this capacity. Along with us here is Grace, along with her mother, Ms. Pamela Erickson, and father, Mr. Jeffrey Erickson. I present to you the Student Advisory Committee member for the 2016 and 17 school year, Grace Erickson. Grace?
I would like to start out by saying that I'm very proud to represent Omaha North at the state level. In the words of Mr. Haynes, it is the best high school east of the Rockies and west of the Mississippi. We have had one meeting so far as the Student Advisory Committee, and we talked about what we will be doing as our goals for the following year. Our goal is to promote positive sportsmanship in all athletic activities throughout the next year. Through this, we created a sportsmanship matrix which outlined the responsibilities for each person's role at the game, from the student section to the athletes to the parents and even the band. Everyone has a role and needs to remember it in order for the athletic function to function properly. We also recorded PSAs that will be played at the games throughout the year. We will have opportunities to help with the NSAA championship matches and state leadership conventions throughout the year. North will provide an outlet to see how our ideas work before we put them out at the state level. And I'm excited to see what comes from this opportunity. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. So that was a lot of students applied for this position and only 12 were chosen. What did you have? Did you fill out an application and an essay maybe?
Yeah.
What do you think in your application essay put you over the top to be able to represent this part of the state and also OPS at the state level?
In my essay, I wrote about how I came to North not knowing anyone and how joining the golf team over the summer really helped me to make connections and find my place at North before I even stepped foot in the building. And so I wrote about how athletics is not just about the competitions, it's about finding your team and how teams can really impact people's lives.
Very cool. Does anyone else have any questions? Okay. Well, great. Well, we want to thank you for the time that you will put in over the next year meeting at the state level, and we'd love to shake your hand. So if you want to come around, we would appreciate that. Okay, with that, we've got first communication piece is from the treasurer. So, Mrs. Kanoki.
I would like to submit to you the financial statements as of May 31st, 2016, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Great. So if you have any questions, please get those to Mrs. Kanoki. Next, superintendent report.
Thank you, Madam President. Several things to report. First, just a great thank you and a shout out to the College World Series and NCAA. I had a tweet that I sent out on my Twitter account where they have expanded a literacy support program from 5 schools in OPS to all 65 elementaries. It includes reading materials and several other support pieces. So thank you, College World Series, NCAA, for supporting our kids in schools. Next, I'm going to pass out the minutes from our last grading committee meeting. We had a meeting after the workshop that we had with the board, and I just wanted to say thank you to all of those teachers and administrators that serve on that committee. Those ladies and gentlemen are clearly serious about their task in front of them, and they're being analytical and thoughtful about their responses. And so just a great thank you to those teachers and administrators. We appreciate looking at not only grading scale, but also homework practices, other kinds of things that really need to be looked at, and trying to do it in a thoughtful manner. So thank you again to all of those. Also, just wanted to mention that our last principal vacancy is Sherman Elementary, and Thursday is a community meeting for that. So if anyone's interested in being a part of hearing the final two, participate in a community meeting on Thursday evening. That will happen at Sherman Elementary School, and thank you, Vice President Williams, for serving on the selection committee to get it down to 2 candidates. And lastly, Ponca Elementary. On August 16th, there'll be a groundbreaking with many of our local dignitaries as well as state senators from the Ponca area. If you are available on the 16th, we'll send more details. Ms. Farmer will be sharing more in the near future, but it will be a great celebration, ribbon cutting, not groundbreaking. I think I said groundbreaking, ribbon cutting. We've already done the groundbreaking, and now that beautiful facility is ready for young people this fall, and it's the first of many. So thank you, Dr. Turnquist, and your team, and everyone else. We're now starting to see these projects come to fruition. It's pretty exciting to see the wonderful facilities our kids, our teachers, and communities will be able to enjoy. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Do board members have any comments that they would like to share? Mrs. Fay?
It is OPS summer musical time. So the district's doing Peter Pan this year. If you've never been to an OPS summer musical, then you need to go this summer. It's going to be at Benson High School this year instead of South Hay. And I don't know. I think you can probably call Mr. Ray and get tickets. And they're reasonably priced. This is students from all over the district participating both on stage, running the technical aspects of the show, and participating in the pit orchestra. So if you enjoy watching students excel and do their best in the performing arts, if you enjoy musical theater, and if you just want to see just some good, wholesome fun, then that is July, 7th, 8th, and 9th at Benson High School, Peter Pan, OPS Summer Musical. I don't think I've missed a year since I've been on the board, and I've never, ever been disappointed. It's always a lot of fun.
I'm sorry, did you give the dates? What time?
7th, 8th, and 9th.
7th, 8th, and 9th, okay.
And I don't have the time, I'm sorry. I'm guessing 7:30, something like that. But again,
Perfect.
you can call
Yeah.
Mr. Ray. Get
And
all
he'll
that.
take care of us.
He will.
All right, thank you. Mr. Scanlon?
No, and they should still call you for the times. I don't know the times. No, I would just like to say that I missed the last board workshop, but I was able to watch it on the podcast, and I would just like to say thank you to all the folks that are involved in the school improvements that we're doing with Howard Kennedy and with Wakanda. Going back when we came in, this board, we had all 71, or I don't know the exact number, but all our principals reporting directly to the superintendent. And that was a change that was made to where we had educational directors that were brought in, and we've had a big culture shift as far as focusing in on schools that needed it, that were low performing. And I think it's fantastic where we're going. And I know that at that board workshop, it was mentioned that, hey, we're not there yet. We've still got a lot of work to do. But we are moving in the right direction. And it was really nice to hear all the progress that we've been making at Wakanda and Howard Kennedy specifically, and that we have a culture change within our school district, that we are focusing in on schools that have been low performing, and we're going to correct that. And I don't know, some of the questions kind of left me as if that the current leadership wasn't moving us in that direction, and I believe that the superintendent and executive council are moving us in that in that positive direction, and I just wanted to emphasize that those changes would not have happened, I believe, under past policies and past administrations. So I think that we have a long road ahead of us, but I believe that we're moving in the correct direction, and I appreciate that because those are major overhauls from where we have been and where we're trying to get to. And I just, watching that, it was great to hear those, especially those two schools, what positive progress we're making.
Thank you. Anyone else? Ms. Williams.
I had an opportunity on Saturday to speak at the Vision Hair and Fashion Show. It was held at Ralston Arena. But it was just a great time to talk about what positive things we're doing in OPS. There was so many OPS alum and current students that were walking in the show, doing runway. A couple designers are from their OPS alum, but we had a lot of students rocking hairstyles for the hair show, and just an amazing time to really talk about the great things that we're doing, not just at OPS, but in our community. And so it was really amazing. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Larissa Blackstone and Tracy Patton for putting that on, and exciting to see how much we had a conversation last year about the arts and fashion, and just seeing how this is growing and spreading, and how we're supporting that work. So I just wanted to give those ladies a shout out for a job well done. Also, we had a NASB, Nebraska Association of School Boards, Board of Directors meeting this weekend, and we've been talking a lot about what NASB represents, what it has typically in the past. And we have currently, along with Katie and Lacey, who sit on that board with me, we approved their strategic plan this past March, which we know a lot about strategic planning, and so we've had a lot of positive input about our process. But we also have, the Board of Directors has a new strategic vision that I want to share with you all. Really what the guidance that we're looking at in the executive committee for NASB is really talking about what can the state association do for school board members and for districts across the state. And we're trying to refocus and rebrand what the association represents. And so we have it's called a LIVE plan. It's leading, innovating, vision and or voice, and engaging. And so just wanted to get everyone a little bit excited about some of the great things we're going to see coming from the state association, and how we're going to support school board members and school districts and staff moving forward in a positive, innovative way for public education. So really rebranding itself to do some great things. So just be on the lookout, and we will have some more reports as we kind of move on in the year. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? Okay. With that, we're going to move on to public comment, and so I just want to go over a few items before we do that, and I'll call your name when you're the next one up, and we'll be as efficient as we can possibly be. So our policy 8346 provides for, among other things, speakers to a maximum of 5 minutes, so that we ask that you respect that time limit. Mr. Ray will let you know when you have 1 minute remaining and when you have 30 seconds remaining as well. We also ask that you respect the opinions of all who speak, and that you refrain from applause or other outbursts during the presentation. If the subject of your public comment is related to a particular student or staff member, we ask that you not mention them by name, but instead provide that information to Mr. Ray, and he will assist you. When you come forward, would you please state your name, the spelling of your last name, and your address? And then Mr. Ray will keep you informed on the time limits. So our first speaker is Alex Gates.
Good evening. My name is Alex P. Gates, Gates. I live at 2612 North 97th Avenue. I'm here this evening standing in solidarity with the board members, students, teachers, parents, and citizens in Omaha who want the OPS board to include protections for transgender students in their anti-discrimination policy. A policy is important because it protects our students, our teachers, and informs the community about what the institution believes and expects. But policy alone is not enough. Without active professional development and without soliciting stories and feedback from our students, teachers, and community, we lose out on the opportunity to understand the depth of the issue, which, as you know, is more than just a bathroom policy. In addition to professional development, I'd like to see our school district provide opportunities for meaningful dialogue, in person and online. We must provide a voice for those among us who may not wish to share their stories publicly. This insight will allow the board to draft a thoughtful and inclusive plan for comprehensive professional development for teachers and staff. I think we can all agree that 5 minutes of public comment at a board meeting is incredibly limiting. Let's avoid pitting members of our community against each other by making sure this isn't the only avenue to speak up and participate. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Amanda Ryan.
My name is Amanda Ryan. It's R-Y-A-N, and I live at 4839 Pine Street. I'm here to speak on the importance of the recommendations made by the Obama administration and the Department of Education for the rights of our transgender students. It is the duty of our board, superintendent, and school administrators to ensure a safe learning environment for all students, including our transgender youth. As stated by Dr. Jay Irwin at the State Board of Education meeting during the June meeting, transgender students, when not accepted according to their gender identity by their school systems, are more likely to experience more days away from the classroom, poor grades, increased mental health issues, suicidal thoughts, and attempts than their gender-conforming counterparts. There are several ways OPS can be a leader in accepting our entire student body. These include using up-to-date inclusive terminology when discussing gender identity and sexuality, respecting students' gender identity by using the student's name and pronouns consistent with their gender identity, and allowing students to use the bathroom facilities according to their gender identity, while maintaining the privacy and safety of our transgender students. These recommendations and similar made by the Department of Education are fundamental in being a truly inclusive school system and should be included in our non-discrimination policies to ensure equal treatment for all students. In keeping consistent with the forward momentum of this board and the Omaha Public School System, I highly encourage the board to make the right decision regarding our students and adopt these recommendations. There have been great strides made in updating our human growth and development curriculum, so let us not stop there and continue to show our students that we truly support them and who they are.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ben Perlman.
My name is Ben Perlman, P-E-R-L-M-A-N. I live at 5112 Capitol Avenue. Tonight I want to talk to you a little bit about the guidance letter issued last month by the Department of Justice and the Department of Education and the OPS vision statement, which is to stand for every student every day. And for those words to mean something, they need to be backed up by action. We cannot remain silent or neutral on situations of injustice. Being a school district for every student every day means standing up for students who are being targeted. Within days of this guidance by the government being issued on how to comply with the law, we saw top Nebraska politicians and even members of the State Board of Education begin to fight against equal treatment for transgender students. This board and Omaha Public Schools now has a choice to make, and that's not just if you will respond, but how. And I'm glad that we're talking about this issue and that Omaha Public Schools has a non-discrimination policy. But to me, this response alone avoids the issue more than it addresses it. Allowing students to use facilities consistent with their gender identity will not put other students at risk. As someone who prosecutes felony child abuse cases, this is something that I know to be true. Those being put in harm's way are the vulnerable students, and they deserve, at a minimum, a school district willing to stand up and put into place policies concerning this specific issue. To actively do nothing is a conscious decision, and it's a decision against the best interest of OPS students, and I ask that this board and this district stand in support of every student, every day. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Nikki Trahand.
My name is Nikki Trahan, Trahan. I live at 2209 Brighton Drive. On May 2nd, I came to the board as a very emotional teacher, looking for help. I discussed minimally some of the issues that I was facing and was looking forward to someone hearing me. As I walked back to my seat, Ms. Gouting stated that she would like Mr. Evans and Mr. Wakefield to meet. I waited a few days without any type of time frame. I then got a call from Mr. Ray, who was very pleasant, on May 6th, stating that there was not going to be a meeting. I followed his suggestion and reapplied with OPS. In my meeting, if you don't remember, I said I love OPS, and I still do, even though I don't have a job with you guys right now. I believe in the district, and I want to continue to grow and learn with the many teachers that the district has, but I haven't heard back about this aspect yet. While I was able to have a heart-to-heart with the administrator, who did apologize for their actions and treatment towards me, it does not take away the hurt or the pain that I still feel from those treatments. I can forgive, but I'm not sure I'll be able to forget. I think the problem that I have is with the non-discrimination statement that is located on nearly every correspondent that OPS has. It lists areas that OPS will not discriminate against. Within this list, there are two small but meaningful words for me: sexual orientation. The issue I want to speak about are the problems that I'm facing as an individual within the LGBT community. No one listened. It was as if I was supposed to remain silent. Does the non-discrimination policy apply to educators, or does it just apply to those that we serve? I wish this was the first time I experienced this problem with administration with the OPS, but it is not. Maybe some more cultural proficiency is needed in this area. You can't forget about your educators. When I left the board last meeting, I wanted two things, and that's the same for tonight. One, I want to remain teaching with OPS under administration without discrimination. And two, I want to be heard so that other individuals identified under the LGBTQI umbrella do not face discrimination in the workplace. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is John Carl, and I hope I get this right, Denkovich. Did I get it right? Very close? Okay.
And I apologize, I'm very subtle with this giant laptop. We're grant funded, so. First of all, I want to thank the members of the board for hearing me this evening, as well as for your affirmation in passing the inclusive curriculum that you did in a previous vote. So thank you very much for that. I'm here today representing a local 501c3 organization, GLSEN Omaha. My name is John Carl Denkovich, Denkovich, and I live at 15932 Douglas Circle. While I'm not a member of the OPS school district, we do represent many educators and students that are a member of the OPS school district. I'm here tonight not only to give you thanks, but also hopefully additional guidance regarding what you can do to continue to offer additional support to students that are LGBTQ plus in the district as you finish out the school year and approach the coming school year. There's a lot of promise in this district, and in the wake of the past school year and all that has taken place before and after, I'm thankful that this is one of several issues that you've chosen to pursue as a matter of great importance. GLSEN supports a number of students who attend OPS schools, as well as educators, and we provide access to programs and services that are healthy, safe, and affirming. I wanted to speak tonight in support of the efforts to proactively address the needs of these students, as evidence continuously shows that these students are at greatest and disproportionate risk to be exposed to unsafe spaces, targets of bullying and harassment by peers and adults, experience emotional and physical abuse or assault, fear of attending school or school activities, even using the restroom or going to gym class can be the reason an LGBTQ plus student fails in school or is absent or truant from school. And we have the power to stop it, and I'm hoping that we can do so together. In addition to what you've already heard, we strongly urge the board to enthusiastically and immediately adopt the recommendations from the Federal Department of Education guidance on Title IX. Additionally, we recommend that the district adopt real or perceived gender identity and/or expression to their district-wide anti-discrimination policy. With our LGBTQ plus students in mind, I hope that you will also consider the need to understand and address the needs of LGBTQ plus educators and youth-serving professionals who fear their reputation, position, and retribution, as well as failure to advance. These educators must be allowed to safely be out and role model for students what healthy, safe, and affirming workplaces look like. Ongoing professional development must be provided to educators on how to intervene in situations of anti-LGBTQ plus bullying and harassment, and that intervention is not optional. I think the district has done a great and remarkable job pursuing safety first and foremost for all of the students in the district, and for that we continue to thank you. And health is a core part of that, so thank you again for the steps that you've taken on inclusive curriculum. Increasing inclusive curriculum cannot just be limited to health, but also accurate and historical literary figures is also necessary. Supporting alliances and student clubs is not only federally required, but should also be enthusiastically encouraged from the top down, and already exist in many of OPS's schools. I brought with me some materials tonight that I'll leave to be passed around that will include the National School Climate Survey, which I believe that I've sent to you electronically. But I have printed copies for you tonight, channeling my inner educator for you all, and they are in color, so they make the graphs a little bit easier to read. But finally, I just wanted to say that there are many things that we could and should be doing to support our OPS students, and GLSEN Omaha offers our support for your efforts and continued invitation to be involved in constructing such avenues for access for LGBTQ plus students.
30 seconds.
And we invite you to utilize us any and all times that we're needed as you pursue these avenues. So thank you very much for your time this evening.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Eris Kolasar.
Hello, my name is Eris Kolesar. That is Koleszar. I live at 3046 South 19th Street. I am a transgender woman, and that is the lens that I'm going to be speaking to you from tonight. I've read over the OPS anti-discrimination policy, and it was glaring to me that gender identity and gender expression are not explicitly protected. I am standing with those here who want protections for trans students explicitly outlined. I've lived in Omaha for about a decade, but I grew up outside of a small town of 2,000 in Indiana. In high school, just over a decade ago, the words gay or homosexual weren't even mentioned in our school by anyone except kids who were using them as slurs against other kids. Almost needless to say, we didn't have a gay-straight alliance. The word transgender wasn't even mentioned once in my entire public school education. I'm here speaking to you because I still grieve for the child that I was that didn't have the chance to be themselves. There was absolutely no space at Eris for at school. I know without a doubt I never would have been allowed to use the women's restrooms, to play on women's teams, to have my name and pronouns taken seriously. And I can also tell you my parents would be the ones going to the school board meetings, making sure I would never have those opportunities. No one needed to speak hateful words against transgender people from a place of authority for me to know these things. The school board didn't have a resolution that banned trans kids from the restrooms they identify with. I know now, and I knew then, because the norm in this culture then and now is transphobia. We are still feared, and that fear seeps into the very deepest parts of your bones. Let me tell you one thing else. Teenage me would have also fought at those school board meetings to keep kids like me from being comfortable in their gender identity. And maybe that is the saddest consequence of the cultural demonization and erasure of trans identities. The consequence of silence, inaction, and apathetic exclusion of trans kids. To learn to hate oneself because of unchangeable parts of your identity. How can we say that we are supporting our transgender students if we do not acknowledge them, acknowledge their identities, acknowledge their needs, acknowledge that they are still targets of hate and fear coming from our culture and even from our political leaders? In the wake of the bathroom bills that are trying to be passed and have passed across the country, in light of the shooting in Orlando, in light of the guidance outlined by the Department of Justice about Title IX's application to transgender students, your inaction and silence will only reinforce their worst fears, that they are not seen, that they are not heard, and that there is no room for them here at OPS. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Gwen Easter.
Thank you. Hello. I'm Gwen Easter, E-A-S-T-E-R. I live at 2895 Benny Street. I just want to know, when enough is going to be enough? First, you all passed the comprehensive sex education. You teaching kids about sex and whatever else. You're ignoring parents. Now it's about the bathroom, the transgender. I want to say, first of all, I do not hate gays. I don't hate transgender people. I'm not homophobic. I have people in my family who is gay. But what I am really tired of is the political correctness of all these things, that we don't, as if we don't have a right to stand up and speak up about how we feel. What about other people and how they feel about their children going into the bathroom with the same sex people who are saying that they are girls when they are really young men, young women? What about that? Bullying, what about us being bullied? What about people not being able to say Jesus, pray in the schools? That's being bullied too. We're getting mandated with all this stuff from the press, from these people. I'm saying, when is enough going to be enough? And if they want to be accepted, why is it that they can't have a bathroom that says transgender? I mean, obviously, if you look on the outside, they're dressing up like girls. If that's how they feel in their minds, why is this got to be an issue? Because there's all these other hidden agendas, wanting to indoctrinate children, raise up kids that believe that this is okay. God made marriage for a man and a woman, and then this law's been passed where men and men can get married and women can get married. That is their choice. They chose to do that. And people should respect that if that's what they want to do. That doesn't mean that we hate people. We don't hate people. But what I'm tired of hearing is that we got to be pressured and pushing our kids, and kids got to be pressured. I don't want my nieces and nephews growing up believing all this stuff is normal when it isn't. It is not normal. And I don't care if people don't like that I said it. It's not. Marriage is supposed to be for a man and a woman. That is how God really ordained it. And God loved these people just like he loves me. He loves them too. But we're being pushed and we're being forced. This stuff is being pushed upon people that does not agree. But what about our children, the children's rights? What about those parents' rights? We're tired of being bullied too. Y'all ignore the parents about how they feel. But yet, Ms. Fahey, you want to say you want their opinions Oh, now it's all, let's hurry up and let's jump on the bandwagon of LGBT, but you wouldn't listen to other parents and how they felt. These hidden agendas that you guys got in this community, it's sick. OPS, it sickens me. Y'all use our kids all the time. And here's just another good example of how people are being abused by these systems, by people who want to push their agendas on us. Across this country, this is happening. Everybody wants to pretend like this stuff is okay. It's not okay. We should have a right to say how we feel too. And I don't think anybody should be bullied or disrespected or none of that. If that's how they choose, that is their choice. But stop pushing all of this stuff up on our kids too. I don't have kids, birth kids, but I have nieces and nephews. And you people are confusing them. And you're confusing other people's kids too. But y'all gonna do what y'all want to do because you're listening not to the parents anyway.
30 seconds.
That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Scott Hayes.
Good evening. My name is Scott Hayes, spelled Hays. My address is 6534 L Street here in Omaha. I'm here tonight to discuss and request that the board abstain from voting and approving bid number 16-036, which pertains to the purchase, installation, warranty, and maintenance of camera systems for 236 district-owned buses. Further, I am requesting that the board put forth a formal request to the OPS staff and the superintendent to rescind their letter of recommendation until a more thorough evaluation of the proposals presented in the bid are completed. My request is being made for two reasons. First of all, and this pertains to OPS's policy of obtaining goods and services that meet the needs of OPS for the best value. It's policy 7000. REI is the low bidder that meets and exceeds all of the bid specifications put forth in bid 16-036. We indicated that on our formal bid that we submitted to OPS. Later, we were told by OPS staff that we did not meet the bid specifications, and as a result, we were going to lose the bid. First, understand that the section in question that the claim is being made that we don't meet is 3.3.47, which reads, viewing software must have the ability to track or shadow a moving subject by blurring selected areas of the video for privacy. That's the blurring we see on videos on the news and stuff where you're trying to protect objects or innocent people. Understand that the words track and shadow when referring to blurs are not industry terms and as such created an unclear bid specification. The confusion was created during our product demonstration when two of my staff members were asked if our blur could, quote, track or shadow. And my staff replied no, as our blur feature isn't fully automated. When we hear the terms tracking, we think in terms of following something. Our blur feature doesn't follow, and we'll explain that here. And let me also note, it's important that no company is proposing an automated blur feature to OPS, something that automatically tracks objects or people as they move around. You have to manually do it. So, and that's what's being proposed is software where the user, when you're watching a video clip, the OPS people that are viewing the video can manually edit and move the blur as the subject moves around the video. And then when they hit submit, the blur will follow the image. But you had to manually tell it to do that, move the mouse around the screen and have the blur move. In effect, the user stops the video, changes where the blur is located, and then plays the video again until the user needs to change the position of the blur. They do that and continue doing that until the video is complete. REI's solution includes software with a blur feature that works in this manner. Therefore, in our opinion, REI's bid meets and exceeds the specifications put forth in bid 16-036. The second point I want to make is regarding the award to a company by the name of Gatekeeper, and it's the evaluation of Gatekeeper's financial stability. In talking with the OPS staff, we were told that a deep dive had been done to evaluate all the companies and make sure they were vetted properly. However, as a concerned citizen and also an Omaha business, I'm concerned and questioning how the OPS staff can recommend Gatekeeper, which is a company that has lost $9 million since inception and faces real challenges moving forward. The company, according to its own audited financials from Deloitte, has a high risk of not continuing as a going concern. Last year, they lost $920,000. The year before that, $1.7 million. And in Deloitte's own words, and signed off by this entity, there is a material uncertainty that may cast significant doubt about the company's ability to continue as a going concern.
30 seconds.
So I ask that the OPS staff investigate or research more who they want to award this to and make sure it's in the best interest of the citizens in OPS. So in closing, I again respectfully request that you act diligently and allow for a complete review of this bid. Thank you.
Thank you. Our last speaker is Megan Hunt.
Hi, everybody. My name is Megan Hunt, and I'm not normal, H-U-N-T, and I'm proud to come from Subdistrict 3 at 4903 Underwood Avenue, 68132. I think you've heard a lot of good arguments tonight for inclusivity in OPS schools, including Ms. Easter's comment. I wasn't going to speak today because I think most of you on the board can guess what I think about transgender inclusivity, but I also think that visibility of support for queer, trans, and marginalized students in the community is kind of a responsibility for those of us who think the safety and happiness of these kids is a priority. So it's not just that I'm standing up to talk to you, but that I'm publicly standing up in solidarity with those kids and those who support them. Equality of access and opportunity, honesty, integrity, and trust, quality programs and services, visionary and participatory leadership, a positive can-do attitude, accountability for results, respect for individuals and individual differences, excellence through continuous improvement. These are the stated values of the Nebraska Department of Education, which by my reading offer little room for the discrimination or bigotry against queer and transgender students that many people have looked the other way on or downright encouraged through their exclusionary rhetoric. I expect this school board to be proactive and vocal in combating that bigoted, destructive mindset by explicitly clarifying OPS's anti-discrimination policy to protect and support LGBTQ+ students. Every student, every day, prepared for success. Omaha Public Schools prepares every student to excel in college, career, and life. Are these empty slogans, or does our school leadership have the courage and wisdom to live up to them? Thank you.
Thank you. So that was the last of our public comments. I did want to point out that the one item that was discussed is actually under action. It's J2D, bid number 036, bus cameras for district-owned vehicles, and is currently not on the consent agenda. This time, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda that is before us.
So moved.
So motion by Ms. Williams. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Fay. Are there any abstentions?
I will be abstaining from, well, actually, I'll just not vote.
I think you're listed on...
I'm listed on C, but because some of these items deal with design of capital improvement, and our company has not decided whether we are going to pursue anything, I will not be voting on any of them because there could be a potential conflict in the future.
Okay. And that's the reason for C as well, just to be on
Yes.
the record. Okay. Any other abstentions? So with that, roll call, please, Mr. Ray.
Gadding,
Aye.
America,
Aye.
Scanlon,
Aye.
Underwood,
Aye.
Vargas,
Aye.
Wayne,
Not voting.
Williams,
Aye.
Fay.
Aye.
7 aye.
Motion carries. All right, next we're going to move on to information items, J1A, committees of the board update. So we'll start off with accountability, Mr. Scanlon, and I'll just call on the chairs of each committee.
With the accountability, the, I guess, kind of regrouping after it was categorized as a bonus for the superintendent, what we were trying to do was come up with a method based on data that would show why we are increasing the salary. And I think after the negative pushback of it being labeled a bonus, what we're trying to do is to just come up with an idea with a process of showing this is why we're increasing the salary of the superintendent or not increasing the salary of the superintendent on a certain amount based on data. We do need to go back and talk with legal, because some of what we're looking at is we have to post the contract agreement with the superintendent by a certain date, but data is not available by that date, so we're going to have to be working with legal to find out how we can be transparent with, yes, we're extending the contract, but at that point, which is I believe it's a July extension or July contract, we don't want to just throw a number out there because we don't have the data until about September, October. So what we're going to be doing is working with legal to try to figure out how we can work within the system and state statute of getting us a little extended time so we can be transparent to the public on how much we will exactly be increasing the salary of the superintendent. So that's kind of what we're working with. We met, I don't think it says, but we met recently, and we'll meet again, and we're going to try to work that out so we can have a reason why we increase salaries other than just grabbing a percent out of the air.
I would just add that along with that, clearly the superintendent's evaluation tool was given to all board members and has been filled out, and so that's a critical component of the accountability committee, as well as our work in developing or finding the tool that we felt was most appropriate for the district, and ensuring that that was developed and included, which had not been the case in the past. So that piece is there, and so tonight we'll, after closed session, we'll vote on the superintendent's evaluation, but on the contract piece, which is due August 1 to the state, we will work with board members over the next month to get you all the information from legal. So I think that's kind of wraps up maybe what Matt said. Next is the Budget and Audit Committee, which actually met today. That's why there's the June 20th date. And right now, Mrs. Kanoki is looking at the potential of estimated revenues of $583 million, which is an increase over 4.66% over the 15-16 budget, which was $557 million. There's a number of additional budget increases that we covered today. One of those key items was the movement of 6th grade from from elementary to middle schools. So with that, and I think if I'm correct, it was about 50 additional staff that we end up hiring because of that, primarily because we now have specific instruction versus a teacher covering all subject matter, as well as a reduction in classroom sizes. So where there were classroom sizes of maybe 28 to 30 plus students in the past, now having more space available in the elementary schools and moving students to the middle schools, we can reduce the number of student to teacher ratio. And so with that and utilization of the classrooms that are being vacated by 6th grade, additional staff has been put into the budget. So I think Mrs. Kanoki is going to kind of get us a list of some of the other things. There was not, I know that there was a discussion at one point about being $7 million short, and that was not at all the case. Staff either figured out what of those wish list items could be put into the budget or which ones didn't work, and she's going to work on getting that for us. And I guess I would just, I think some of the parameters were the negotiated contracts had a 3.5% increase, so that's clearly the majority of what our increased budget would cover. So I guess, is there any other items that, Mr. Scanlon and Mrs. Fay were at the budget committee meeting today that I missed?
I would just say, Mrs. Scotting, you did a good job of summarizing why the emphasis was put on increasing those teacher salaries and tying it to the strategic plan, and maybe you could just restate that, because I thought you did it really well today.
Thank you. One of the things we talked about was, as we get ready to prepare to share with the board a full budget presentation, really tying those expenditure items that we're wanting to increase back to the strategic plan. And one of the things that we know was that this board approved a fairly significant salary increase to all of our teachers, and we did that because the strategic plan called for highly qualified teachers in every classroom and well compensated. And so our decision during negotiations to increase the compensation to our staff really ties directly back to the strategic plan and the desire for us to have highly qualified staff in all of our classrooms. So those are the kind of things that Mrs. Kanoki is going to be working on as she prepares for us the reasoning behind the decisions made for where additional expenditures would be.
Well, and I would just also say, and where there's reductions made, if there's
Right.
cuts made anywhere. I know that we, for example, in textbook adoption, we're going to be seeing not necessarily cutting textbooks, but not being able to adopt as many new make as many new textbook purchases in the next school year as we would like to.
Right.
But these are all decisions that are aligned with the strategic plan. And so, as Mrs. Scotting said, Ms. Kanoki will be presenting that alignment when the budget is presented to us. So.
Right. So, and I do want to reiterate, and I know Mrs. Fay and I both talked about it, just a thank you to Mrs. Kanoki and the staff for the excellent work that you've done in providing us really clear communication prior to getting to that September date. I think our first year, we just got to the September date and we were told the information. And so it's been really helpful as you've worked on the budget to be able to share with us and have us ask you questions and be a little bit thoughtful. There will be a couple of areas where we will be going out for bid. I know Mrs. Kanoki is working right now on an RFP, and those will be banking and auditing. So that will be coming to us at some point in the future, just as an FYI. Yes, Mr. Evans.
Just as a follow-up to that, I also want to thank Ms. Kanoki, but also suggest that we were able to move this budget forward without some of the cuts of some of our neighboring districts, and I appreciate Ms. Kanoki's work to help us with that. And just as a reference, I know many of you have read the articles about the 7% increase in property tax in selected areas of OPS and the other parts of the metro. We did not include any of those adjustments in this budget. We are waiting to see what happens. As we all know, that's being challenged right now by the county, so we don't know definitively what that's going to mean for us, so we purposely did not include any increases based on that work. So I wanted that to be public.
Mr. Scanlon.
I've had the opportunity to sit on 2 of the committee meetings for the budget, and I just want to let the public know that I believe that we're moving in a very positive direction. I think that trying to show more transparency and also trying to just bring about kind of a budget that rationalize it to where we are today as opposed to where it has been, and it's, you know, we're not taking it, that's how it's always been, so we're moving that forward, and I think that Connie's doing a very nice job of helping us as board members that sit on that committee see the improvements that we're trying to do within the transparency, and also just try to, you know, we're kind of, unfortunately, still digging ourselves out of a hole at times, and I think that, you know, I think we're moving in the right direction with a lot of things, and it's not going as fast as everybody would like, but we are still making progress in a number of different areas, budget being one of them, and I appreciate your hard work.
Thank you. And then I just want to mention, because we did talk about it in the Budget Committee meeting today, and maybe Mr. Wakefield could, I'm sorry, I left my little notes at home, but staffing-wise, classroom staff, teachers were really in pretty good shape, correct? And can you just share just a little bit with the board so we kind of know where we're at staffing-wise for this fall?
We probably have about 80% of our hiring of teachers done currently. We have about very approximate numbers, about 80 or 90 positions still to hire, a big chunk of those in special ed or non-classroom teaching positions. We are doing tomorrow, for the first time ever, a job fair that OPS is hosting themselves for classified staff as we begin to work on paras, food service, transportation, other staff. Tomorrow from 1 to 7 at North High, we'll be hosting that job fair.
That's great. So thanks for being creative as well. Mrs. Merica.
Could we share the date of the other job fair as well?
You are testing my memory.
Sorry.
July 12th, I believe, is the other day. So, and that is at South High.
So great. Okay, so that is a little update on the Budget Committee. I don't know if anybody has any questions on that, but again, thanks to the board members on that. Communications, we have not met. We got the calendar out to everybody, and Mr. Ray is still typing the changes to our board handbook, so hopefully we'll be getting that done soon, and I think we have a communications meeting scheduled here sometime in July. Policy Committee meeting, we met since we've last had an update to the board, and our primary work has been on the community partnership agreement and trying to figure out what the best way to word everything is and what the requirements are that we should ask of community partners and how their work aligns with the strategic plan and ensuring that we aren't creating a lot of red tape. So I know we've spent a lot of time hashing over it, so I want to thank the board members who sit on that committee for all the hard work that they've put in, because it saves everyone at this table a lot of time when we're trying to work through. Staff has also been working through and has developed a tool that will be used by community partners that will bring the whole thing back. So I'm hoping after our next meeting, we hopefully can bring that policy to you. I want to also point out that the 5,000 policy revisions are in hard copy in front of you, so those will be coming to a board meeting, and I think that leaves us with only one section left. Is that correct, Mr. Ray?
This is part 1 of the 5,000 series.
That's right. So there's two parts to it. So we did talk in policy committee about breaking that down and not making it palatable for everyone. And then the last, the one that we haven't brought forth yet, which will be coming, is, remind me the section that we haven't.
So this represents the first batch, or the final batch of the 5,000s, and then we'll be going back and reviewing current policy.
So we have gotten through.
Yep.
Okay, so which was a goal that we had, was to get through all these policies, and so Mr. Ray's been doing a good job as well in the policy committee of giving us kind of an update of where we're at and what changes are being made, and correcting some things. So it doesn't mean that we certainly are catching everything, but we appreciate everyone reading through the policies. With that, we'll move on to Americanism. Mr. Wayne?
We have not met.
Okay. Student assignment plan, Mrs. Underwood.
The Student Assignment Plan Committee met on May 24th. The primary topic of discussion was reviewing of the boundary changes for Saratoga as Saratoga transitions to the ILP program, which is an agenda item for us further on, so we'll get more into that a little later. We also talked about proposed boundary changes along with the 75 North project for Kennedy. I imagine that'll come back in front of the board at some point, but we just kind of reviewed that. Our dynamic research department, I think, caught that we need to make some adjustments there in order to include the new neighborhood that's associated with the 75 North project in the boundaries for Kennedy. Let's see. We also talked about, we just got an update on the communication that's going on to assist families with the changes to the new student assignment plan. There's a lot of that going on over the summer. And I think that's everything, unless any of the other members want to chime in.
Mrs. Fay.
I have a question. What neighborhood are we pulling, what neighborhood school are we looking at pulling from when you adjust the attendance area for Kennedy?
That would be Conestoga, correct? Yes, Conestoga.
Okay. Okay. So Conestoga would lose some neighborhood students to go to Kennedy because of the purpose-built community development that's happening.
Right. It's a very small number. I don't remember the number off the top of my head, and if we want,
it's like, I remember. I think there were maybe 17 households, approximately something like that, were targeted, and those were families that were crossing 75, and so the recommendation was really to keep them on the west side of 75, which made more sense, so that they wouldn't have to go across. But it was a very small number of students currently in OPS in that area.
Thanks.
Yep.
Yes, I feel I have to jump in. I always feel I have to jump in, but don't. So we are working with the engagement part of that aspect, so we have not brought the full proposal to the board yet. It's a real small number of families. I think there's 6 elementary age students that are in that attendance area. Office of Community Schools and Family Engagement is working on some communication, actually tomorrow, I believe, and so we'll be coming back to the full board with the full proposal with all the details, probably at the second meeting in July.
Okay. So I don't have anything to add. I don't know if anybody has any other questions. We'll move on to Legislative Committee. Mrs. Fay.
Yeah, we're meeting tomorrow. This is sort of the last call, not forever, but before this meeting, if any board members have some recommendations to the committee regarding our legislative strategy for the 2017 session. We got a little bit of input today during the budget committee meeting, and I know that Mrs. Knoke has sent some things on to Mr. Lindsay. So if you have anything that you want to recommend to the budget committee prior to our meeting tomorrow, please email Mr. Ray in the next but before, we meet at 2. Before 2 o'clock would be great. Thanks.
We're giving you lots of notice, Mr. Ray, to get that all taken care of. Construction manager at risk. There is one coming up, right? At Benson, and you're sitting, and Ms. Williams is sitting on that, so she'll give us an update after that. Specialty schools review and recommendations, Ms. Williams.
We met on the 14th. Right now, our main focus areas, I mean, we've talked a little bit about the Saratoga, some of the Kennedy, a little bit of those specialty programs, but our 4 areas that we really have been focusing on are magnets, any of the capital facility changes, academy schools, and dual language. But we really focused, our last meeting was getting recommendations for magnet schools. And so Mrs. Fay and I were both there, and I think that where we are now is we have asked staff to bring us their final recommendation and presentation to our July 12th meeting about magnet and actually focus schools will be the recommendation that they will bring in, but we would like to fully vet that presentation and make sure that all the committee we're all on point with that. I feel like at this point we've met quite a bit, and so it is time for us to bring some recommendations out to the full board. So you will see that at the second meeting in July. Mrs. Fay, did you want to add anything?
Okay. Citizens Bond Oversight Committee, Mr. Scanlon.
Well, I think I've commented before that since I guess maybe May of this year until September of next year, we've got a large number of projects that are very significant as dollar amounts. We've got beverage going into the renovation. We've got Crestridge. We've got Joslin. We have Bell Ryan. We have Western Hills. I'm sure I'm leaving out some, and Franklin. We have a large number of projects that are dollar-wise very significant. I guess I have stated that my personal opinion on a possible second phase bond. I believe that we need to start having that conversation. It did come up at the last CBOC meeting. The committee members wanted to start talking about, perhaps in the first phase we didn't give the community or those people that were supporting enough time to gain that support, and they'd like to be ahead of the game. So we did have that conversation. I personally think that spring of 2018, possibly fall of 2018, I think those are our best opportunities to have a successful bond, a second phase of the bond. But I believe that's a conversation that we need to bring to the board table, and we need to have those conversations, and also be mindful that as we have those conversations this year, this election cycle, will bring at a minimum 3 new board members to the table. So I don't think we should make any decisions before a new bond or before a new board is brought in early next year, because that would be unfair to those board members. But again, that's a conversation that we need to start having, and we need to start thinking about what would be a prudent way to move forward. I think when we did the first phase of the bond, we threw out 2017, but I don't think that was anything that was not concrete. That was just something that was okay. Hey, this is an idea of where we move, and I think it's important that as we move forward. The first phase was about capital improvements, and I think we're moving in a positive way with that. We're improving the facilities that we currently have. The second phase will be a little bit more growth-based, and new schools, new high schools, and so I think that's something that we need to start discussing and figuring out when we want to present that to the public. So the CBOC was just trying to start to ask those questions, and I think that as we move forward, those are good questions that they had and wanted to know where we were as a board. So that's something on the radar moving forward.
And one of the things that, and I get asked that question all the time by constituents because, of course, they're very anxious to get moving on things. One of the things that will happen is in September, we'll have the facility study back. Is that correct? And so once that facility study comes back, and I've already asked Mr. Evans to be working on some other items, including career education, which we'll be talking about at our August workshop, and what that looks like for the community and what that looks like for Omaha Public Schools. So there will be lots of opportunity, and we will include that discussion as we get the capital study back, and as we clearly will have some discussions in the next couple of months about facility needs. And as we will see our numbers for this fall, we're hearing from a couple of principals that there's no room left. They have no room left at the high schools for their students, and so we're experiencing some really, I think we've closed 5 of our 7 high schools, and the other 2 are really close to capacity. So, Mr. Scanlon.
And I guess I just would also like to talk to the board about the fact that we have had some, as we go through, Jacobs has been very transparent as saying we're over budget, under budget, at different phases until it goes out to bid and we get those hard numbers back. That's when we can really start to get a better idea of where we are. And I think with the bond proceeds, if I'm remembering correctly, I think we were on the positive side of $10 million better on the first phase, or was that the second phase? Tony, I'm looking. The first issuing of the bonds.
The first tranche.
The first tranche.
And Mr. Summers is nodding in the back. Yes.
Was it 10 million that we're on the positive side? So I think we also need to have discussions at the board table as far as what intentions were, as far as with the new high schools and the new elementary schools that we're purchasing land for. What were the intentions? I know the ballot initiative says, that it's more in depth than possibly what some folks were intending. And so I just think that we need to be very transparent and have that discussion of what did we intend as a board with this first phase of the bond, what monies were to be allocated for how far along a design phase was put in there. Was it conceptual or was it shovel ready, and where we were. So I think that needs to again come to the board table, and we have to have that conversation because, fingers crossed, I think we will be in the surplus, and we'll have to make decisions of what we want to do with what our intentions were with the high school developments and the the elementary schools in South Omaha. What were our intentions, and what dollar amounts were we thinking as a board needed to be allocated to that to those projects? So I think we have a high level discussion to have.
Sounds good. So I wrote all those things down, and we'll look forward to that conversation probably once we get to maybe September-ish is what we're thinking. So very good. Next committee is Code of Conduct. Mr. Snow is not here, but I don't know if Mr. Scanlon and Mr. Wayne have anything that they want to add.
We haven't met.
Oh, have not met. And Mr. Ray, do you have anything from the staff side? You seem to have some items you want to add. Okay, just making sure. All right, with that, we're going to move, if there's no other questions on committees, we're going to move on to J1B, Policy 1200, anti-discrimination, anti-harassment, and anti-retaliation, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Evans.
Thank you, Madam President. At the request of several board members, we're reviewing policy number 1200, which is kind of interesting, and I didn't realize it until staff did a little research, but this policy of anti-discrimination, anti-harassment, anti-retaliation was developed from guidance with OCR in 2014. The guidance came as a result of a 2013 complaint, or maybe a couple of complaints, and that led to the district officials working hand in hand with OCR to create this policy. It is, as you know, looking at the copy of it, a little more expansive. In fact, I'd say a lot more expansive than most anti-discrimination policies. In fact, if you look at the start of the second paragraph, you'll note that it includes not just race, religion, nation of origin, but it also includes sexual orientation, disability, age, genetic information, things that you don't see in a lot of them. In fact, I would say that that's probably more inclusive than 75 to 80% of the policies that I've seen in other school districts. So I'll start with that, and I also want to say that I don't think any of us in this room or any of us at this board table could agree more with the speakers who talked about safety first. That is rule one. Every young person in this district, every one, all 53,000, deserves to have a safe and secure place. And if they don't, then we need to work on that. That's not something we will tolerate. Part of what we've done in preparation for that is the courageous stance that this board took, almost unanimously, voting for an update and training with staff on our HGD curriculum. That's inclusive of some of the expectations we have with this board policy in Board Policy 1200. I would also kind of go on to say, besides the safety issues and the seriousness of how we take each of those, we are going to have conversations in our principals retreat this summer, asking them, one, talking about the policy, asking them, one, if there's anything else that we need to be aware of, because at this juncture I've not had any complaints or concerns, but I want to make sure that we're double checking with all of our counselors, we're double checking with all of our principals, we're providing the training and supports to let everyone know this is the expectation. No young person should ever feel unsafe. No young person should ever feel that they are demeaned for any of those categorical reasons identified in Policy 1200. And I think that is absolutely critical, to me, the starting point of all of this. I also would share that we're building in best practices, some of those same concepts that we utilized in the summit that we had this summer with teachers and administrators, and I'm working closely with district staff, including Mr. Lawaru, to provide training in our quarterly all administrative groups. It's our administrative supervisors group. We're going to be using some of those same speakers and identifying, again, how we are making certain that all young people are treated appropriately, and also, quite frankly, just understanding the dynamics of the multiplicity of groups that this very, very diverse district includes, because it is very diverse. This is the most diverse district in the state of Nebraska, so it clearly is and clearly needs that. So I wanted to start with that, and I do recognize that we're all waiting for some guidance that I think is going to come from the State Department of Nebraska in relationship to the DOJ letter. We're all waiting to see. I know they've had one vote that was a tie vote. My understanding is they're going to be moving ahead again, trying to look at it in committee to give us any additional wording and parameters that might make this policy more appropriate as well for our kids. But regardless of any changes to this, we will not accept that a young person is not treated with the utmost dignity and respect, and we're dealing with it with great privacy and individualism as any student needs. They need to know that they can do this without any fear of repercussions, and so that's going to be an ongoing concern regardless of anything the Department of Justice does, regardless of anything the State Department does. That's our expectation. That's my personal expectation. So I was glad that we wanted to have that conversation, because I think it's critical that we have that public disclosure that that's what this board's been about, that's what this administration's been about, and you see the evidence of it, because that was a challenging 8 to 10 months that we worked through in trying to find ways to make sure we are meeting the needs of all young people, and trying to find ways of how we were going to support understanding all young people. So with that, I will end on what I have here, but the policy is included in your packet. And again, pretty recent update with 2014 and much more inclusive than you might expect if you haven't read it. Thank you, Madam President.
Ms. Williams.
So, although my challenge is looking ahead to making considerable changes that would potentially have us in a lawsuit. And so as we're talking budgets, and yes, Mrs. Kanoki is doing great on that, I feel like where we can make some progress is looking at, we've had speakers on both sides for months and months and months. But being considerate of not just our students, but our staff as well, I think that it would be a positive move for the board to consider adding in. We have sexual orientation in there, but we do not have gender identity and gender expression. If we're talking every student, every day prepared for success, and making sure that our students are safe, to me, whatever their background is, we are supposed to keep them safe. And if this is our policy, then I think we should do our due diligence in adding those 4 words in there, which there's more conversation to be had, obviously. But I think this is a good start for all of our families, our students, our staff on both sides, to make sure that we are, our anti-discrimination, anti-harassment, and anti-retaliation policy has that in there. I just would like the board to consider that. Before I make a motion, I just would encourage any comments. Or not a motion, pardon, but a recommendation for a motion.
It's not an action item. Mrs. Fay.
Thank you, Ms. Williams, for that recommendation to the board, and I think that was appropriate when we're looking at the anti-discrimination policy, and I thank Mr. Evans for bringing it to us and putting it out there in response to, I know I was one of the people who requested that we have this as an agenda item for this meeting, if not sooner. I think that my concern about just looking at this through the lens of this particular policy is that it actually does leave room for some of the things that you're concerned about, Mr. Evans, and I know one of the things you talked about was privacy and individualism, and that you haven't had any complaints, and that this is a starting point. And I think that that's where I go to some of the things that are something else that you referred to, best practices. And so I've been looking at some of the things that are happening around the country. There's a document called Schools in Transition that's from the ACLU Human Rights Campaign and the National Education Association, and that's where the language comes that I think argues for another approach, different from the one that you're recommending, which is rather than putting out fires and handling cases on an individual basis, that we're looking at fire prevention. And so we're I'd like to see us discuss specific policy that addresses the DOJ letter, that addresses some of the points that were made by our speakers today, and specifically to restroom use, locker room use, those kinds of things. I think that we can be leaders in that area. I think that there's actually precedent around the country already for policies that have been adopted by other school districts and have been upheld and supported by the OCR. So I don't feel like we have to make it up. I think that there's examples of things that are working around the country and have been supported. In addition, as the largest school district in the country, in the state, and as you said, the most diverse one by virtue of the fact that we're the largest, I think that it's incumbent upon us to be leaders in this area. I don't know why we need to wait. I think when you represent well over 50,000 students, we can actually provide guidance to the state for what it is that they should be doing. They're not educating over 50,000 students. We are. And so I think that's our job, to help give them some guidance rather than waiting for them to tell us what they think we should do. Some other things that I want to point out from some of the reports that I've read, I think that creating a more, these are not my words, these are things I'm taking from the Schools in Transition report, creating a more welcoming environment is a more effective and lasting strategy than trying to solve concerns associated with individual students, that we need to have a systematic approach which will increase all students' sense of safety, engagement, and inclusion, which is what Mr. Evans wanted to point out. I think you said safety, probably 7 or 8 times in your comments. The Southern Poverty Law Center is another resource that I think we can look to with their document Teaching Tolerance, which recommends that school districts are very specific in policy language. That goes back to what Mrs. Williams is recommending in adding some specific policy language, but I think we can go further in talking about what it is we want to be specific on. I think about some of the comments that were made here, specifically Eris's comments during public comment section, and by not being specific in the message that we're sending, are we leaving that space open for there to be discrimination, intolerance, and questioning as to whether or not we support a student's rights? I know from having 4 children in the district, I personally know of a student who chose not to cross during graduation, a transgender student who, because they were told that the name that would be announced as they crossed the stage is the one that was on their diploma, their birth certificate. I understand that until a law gets changed, I believe it's statute that the name on your, I'm looking at Ms. Neelis Brash, but I think the name on your diploma is the name on your birth certificate, but that doesn't mean that the name that's announced as you cross the stage has to be that name. So you can use nicknames, you can use whatever. So this student chose not to participate in graduation. So that's where maybe not having specific policy or specific instruction just leaves room for question, and then you're left with that putting out fires situation instead of fire prevention. I know the National School Climate Survey from GLSEN is another really good resource. I just think that there's a lot more that we can do. I think we can go a lot further than just beefing up our anti-discrimination policy. I do just want to address one other comment that was made in public comment today, and that was about me having a hidden agenda. And if you know anything about me, there's nothing hidden about my agenda. It is right out there. So proud to have an agenda. So I'm going to leave it at that, but reserve the right to come back with more comments later.
Mr. Vargas.
Thank you, President Gotting. I appreciate both the comments so far. This is along the lines of what I was hoping to comment on, so I don't want to echo too many of what's already been said. There are a few things I just want to emphasize. One is, I think there have been many times at the board table where we've sat here and we've listened to amazing things that we've done as a district, where we've set new precedent. I also believe there are times where we have, echoed sentiments around waiting and seeing what the state would do and waiting for some directive. I want to echo what both my fellow board members have said, that we shouldn't be waiting on something that we know is aligned to our strategic plan, aligned to the sentiments that our superintendent just shared about making sure every one of our students is in a safe and inclusive environment. And that means creating and passing and implementing policy that ensures every single kid in our system has that. When we look at the policy, it doesn't do that yet. It means to make sure and ensure every single student has that, we need to make sure we are continually revising and including language. And I agree with Ms. Williams, the language on adding sexual identity and sexual expression that gets to what we're seeing across the country. We are seeing changes happening, and I think it's been happening over the last 6 months. And it's been happening in public school districts that are very similar to ours. You're seeing in Tulsa, they recently passed what is considered very comprehensive school board reform in terms of anti-discrimination that includes language and that protections for transgender identities. And they even went so far as to create what I think is getting to what Ms. Fay is talking about, is a 14-page report that outlines what we mean when we're creating an inclusive environment. What are the best practices, and what are we trying to do to get to a place to support the policy that sets the standard? And so I just want to echo, we should not wait for the state to create or decide what their interpretation is of this, when we ourselves can be informed on the amazing staff that we have. But also, we know in our gut that if we're creating a more inclusive environment, it means ensuring that the different identities that may not be here for a lot of different reasons, sharing what hurts, or our students may not being here sharing what hurts on a daily level, that doesn't mean that we should not be open and honest to the pain that they may be receiving, and that we've heard from some of the speakers and from GLSEN reports and from ACLU reports, and you name it, the data's out there. So I am firmly behind updating this policy to be more inclusive from the best practices we're seeing across the country, from the new changes we're seeing in school boards in Albuquerque, Philadelphia, and Tulsa, and all over the country. We need to be ahead of the game. We need to set the standard for our state, and we need to do that now. We should not wait. And I welcome more conversation about this, because I'm sure there's others that have responses to that. But thank you.
Ms. Merica.
Thank you, Mrs. Cotting. First, I wanted to clarify, I know this is not what you meant to say, Mr. Vargas, but just for the public in general, sexual orientation, sexual identity, and gender identity are two completely separate things. So I don't want anyone watching at home or listening to think that our board doesn't understand that, because I think we all do. I agree with, I don't know how I forgot your name, Yolanda, for a second there. Oh my God, because I call you Yolanda. With what Ms. Williams said regarding adding gender identity and gender expression specifically to our policy, and I think maybe we should look at if there are other things that should be added to that policy, as long as we're reviewing for this, because I know I took a look at UNO's today, and they also have pregnancy, veteran status, political affiliation, and a couple other areas specifically in their policy that maybe we should look at. Are there other things we're leaving out at the same time? But I also agree we do need to look and see if we need a broader policy. But I want to hear from our students and staff as well. Is this policy working? Is there something they see that we're not doing that we should be doing? What do our students see going on in our school? Mr. Loaru, I know you're back there. I saw you. Hi. I gave you a heads up earlier. I would really like if our board can put together like specific questions asking our student voices panel, because I think that would be an excellent resource for this. If we can, as a board, put together some questions, either sending them to Mr. Ray and he can formulate things together. If you would be willing to send that to our Student Voices panel and our recent alumni to put together a report of their feedback. One, because I don't want our students having to come up here in front of us and tell us, I'm being bullied at school, my friend is being bullied at school, and have somebody record it and put it on the internet and subject them to that negative attention and exposure that can come from that, because we saw that happen with human growth and development, and no student or staff member or anyone should go through that. I don't know if there's a way that we can work with OEA to do something similar just to get feedback from our teachers and staff of, when I report a problem, this is what I see happening well, this is what I don't see happening well. Just so that we have that feedback as a board that we can go to and we're hearing those voices. So that's something that I don't know if I can ask us to do that or strongly encourage us to do that, but I think if we're doing something that affects our faculty, you can tell I work at a university, that affects our teachers, staff, and students, we should be getting input from them as well.
I know the policy committee is meeting, and so I think that's a great idea. I think it would also be really helpful to have our student councils, which are at all of our high schools, and I think maybe some of our middle schools, give us feedback as well, and really get a very, broad approach to that. So some of the things that I've heard, which is safety and inclusiveness, and making sure that we're tolerant of everyone, are clearly very, very important to me. And as I've been talking to my constituents, there are a few things that have come into my awareness that I was not aware of before, and I also was not aware that OCR worked with us hand in hand in writing this policy less than 2 years ago, which I think is interesting. But one of the things that we talk about is privacy of students. And we do have, as you said, 50,000 students. And so when I think about bathroom policies, I am not at all concerned that a transgender student is going to assault another student in the restroom. I'm not concerned about that at all. But I am concerned about the privacy of all students in the restroom. And so I was doing some research of my own, and we know that in men's restrooms, our boys' restrooms, we have urinals, which are open and not in stalls. We also know that a lot of our older buildings have stalls that do not have, are not maybe the most private. And so I've seen some information related to a school, specifically in Minnesota, that actually took a look at having gender-specific and then gender-neutral restrooms, and they converted a couple of restrooms to being gender-neutral, which when I go into high schools and I ask students what are their greatest needs, the first thing I hear specifically from everyone is food. They want more menu options. But the second item specifically from girls is that there isn't enough restroom space. And so in these particular restrooms, they did floor-to-ceiling stalls and made them very private and very safe for everyone to use. And so I guess for me, I would need to understand what privacy means for all students and what the potential costs would be associated with that, because I don't think that's something we're really talking about. And as I've talked to specifically elementary school teachers, they're a little concerned about how that looks in their spaces as well, and making sure that we are treating everybody with privacy and dignity. And, you know, I've gone back to Mr. Evans a number of times and said, the last thing I want is for a child to be put up as some kind of a political statement and then be bullied as well. And that's what I don't want to see. I want to make sure that we're very, very respectful of all of our students, and that, and are we doing that today? And I've been assured that our practices are very, very solid, and that we're very thoughtful in how we address issues with families and students, making sure that the students' needs are always at the top of our priority. So I guess I just think about those things as well, and I think it's a much bigger conversation than just everyone gets to use the restroom of their choice. I think there's a bigger conversation out there for all students. So, Ms. Williams.
So we do meet as a policy committee on the 29th. And so I would just ask all of my fellow board members any input on this particular policy, because I think this is something that we can take a more immediate action on. If you can send those requests or any input to Mr. Ray, so we can tackle this particular policy. I think that's something we can do right away. So I would just like to ask that of everyone, and then we can have more consideration at our next meeting.
And I want to explain, because we've said the word the initials OCR, and for those in the public or those watching on television who are unaware, that stands for the Office of Civil Rights. It's a federal, that would be federal and not state. Mrs. Fay.
A couple of things come to mind. First of all, if we're going to be more specific in our policy, and I apologize for not including how policy might affect our staff members as well, because that's certainly something that needs to be taken into consideration. So if there, in your comments, Mrs. Scotting, make me think about almost like there's a privacy concern right now in our restrooms. I don't go into men's restrooms very often, have on occasion because I have 3 boys. But, you know, if the fact that there are no stalls in men's restroom is a privacy issue, potentially for transgender students, then it's a privacy issue right now for anybody using the bathroom, not just because transgender students might be using the bathroom. So if that's an issue, then that's something we need to address, not something we need to address because students would be using the bathroom of their gender identity. So I don't think you make that distinction once you make a policy change. I think if that's a concern that you're hearing, then it's something we need to address now. And I think that that's where this issue gets bogged down in, I'm just going to call it overthinking. It's really just quite simple and quite easily understood to be using the locker room and or the restroom of your gender identity. There may be a more graceful way to say that, Ms. America, but that's, you know, I think it's as simple as that. And if there are any potential privacy concerns based on the ones that you brought up, then those are things that need to be addressed regardless. So I also think, you know, I'm gonna leave it at that. I don't want to create a problem or an issue where there isn't one currently, and there's not. So when you're talking about respecting the privacy of students, and when you're talking about making a political statement with students, that only happens when you take these cases on an individual basis, and then all of a sudden it does become about an individual student. And so, you know, where we can avoid targeting or highlighting or drawing attention to individual students and families is by creating broad, inclusive policy rather than the other way around. I think it's a great idea to hear feedback from students and families, and I thank Ms. Merica for bringing that up, and Mr. Lawaru's office for taking on that task, and I think that's a really good idea. But I also know that some of these policies have been written around the country. I think Mr. Vargas named a few, and some of them address the very concerns that you brought up, and some of them have been supported by the OCR and some have not. And so again, while we can look at some of the practicalities of how much things cost and whatever, there is precedent that's being upheld. And so we don't have to invent this. We don't have to make it up. So I would caution us from, while I think it's important to get the student and the family input, that's always important, regardless of whatever the topic is. I would caution us from creating a situation where we're allowing an overhyped political or politically charged environment from dictating what we know is right and what we know is the safest, best course of action.
Mr. Scanlon.
I guess I'd like to hear from, excuse me, from legal counsel. Since 2014 was when it was rewritten, have we had any lawsuits brought upon us? Just like to understand, you know, do we have a policy that's written that has prevented us from lawsuits?
We regularly have NEOC complaints that deal with discrimination. So, and I'm not talking about transgender students in this particular situation. So when you say lawsuits, we're sued all the time. That's part of the nature of being a large employer. But that policy is something that came as part of 2 OCR complaints, one that happened in 2013. And as part of that settlement, OCR worked with us on drafting the discrimination policy. So, I mean, that's pretty much, it was all before my time. And I can't speak to the specifics, but can provide you any documentation that you would need in that situation.
Have we been sued since then based off of this policy?
Well, any OC complaints, I would say yes. Because discrimination happens, people claim discrimination on a regular basis.
I guess I should clarify for transgender and gender identity.
No.
Thank you.
Ms. Merrick.
I think I kind of understand what you're saying, Mr. Scanlon, but just because we haven't been sued because it's not in there doesn't mean we shouldn't take the steps to put it in there. Because if you're a member of this community and you look at our policy and don't see yourself covered or represented in it, that's a big statement. I think it's similar to when we were discussing principals and teachers. If you're a minority and you look at the teaching pool and principal candidates and you say, there's no one here that looks like me, you don't feel welcomed into that. If you read our non-discrimination statement and it doesn't say you're protected from discrimination, you're a part of this, you can feel like you're completely outside of that as well. And so I think even though we haven't been sued over it, we should take the steps and do what's right and have it in there.
And you're referring to the including language such as gender identity and gender expression and
yes.
political and all the other things that you mentioned is what you're...
That's what I'm saying.
Ms. Sunderwood.
So I remember seeing our anti-discrimination policy when I first joined the board. It's on a lot of our like letterhead and things like that. And I remember being pretty impressed with it because my first experience with something like this was when I was on the Omaha Young Professionals Board. We had taken a position when the city was considering the Equal Employment Ordinance, which they ultimately adopted, which was great. But anyway, so I just remember seeing this, but I am in support of, adding the terminology for gender identity and gender expression, but also doing a little research. I agree with Ms. Merica on, are there other things that we need to add in there just to make it really clear to our community and to our students. I think something like this anti-discrimination ordinance, it's really kind of the bedrock of public schools. We accept everyone that comes through our doors, and then, it's regardless of who they are, and it's our job to make it an inclusive and welcoming environment. So I am glad to hear Mr. Evans talk about just training for staff and cultural competency. I think we need to be doing that on a regular basis, no matter what, whether we have updated anti-discrimination ordinances or not. I also kind of like the idea of Omaha Public Schools taking the leadership on this, because frankly I've seen a lack of leadership at the state level, with our governor coming out and basically telling school leadership to ignore the letter from the Department of Justice, which I think is completely unhelpful and irresponsible. So I'm really glad that this was brought in front of the board to have a discussion. It's important. Again, it goes back to just kind of the bedrock of public schools in general. So I'm glad we're having a healthy conversation about it.
Thank you. Okay, so I think what I'm hearing is that we'll have some discussion at the policy committee meeting, and if board members can, yeah, go ahead, and then I'll.
The United States Department of Ed put out in May. Examples of policies and emerging practices for supporting transgender students. It's a guide. It is about 25 pages. It goes into examples from the past 2 years from districts and states, school boards that have put forward policies and best practices related to transgender, gender identity, and gender expression. Thank you, Lacey, Ms. America. Before we have our meeting, I think we should look at that. So that's why I referenced the whole title. I'll send it out also, but there are many guides like this sent out by the Department of Ed, and I implore us, both of our staff, I'm making an assumption that we already referenced this, given that it was so, it was timed pretty well with what we're doing, but based on what I'm seeing, it doesn't feel or seem like it has been referenced, or else we would see some more of the changes regarding some of these best practices, or at least a reference to, we reference this this guidance for what we're seeing across the country. But from moving forward, I think we should look at this, and there are other examples. I did highlight Tulsa Public Schools. I highlighted Albuquerque Public Schools, Fairfax Public School System, Philadelphia school system have all been doing this, and as many others, including many in the Midwest. And so I hope that's the part of the conversation we have is not only what's brought to us, but that we are doing our own due diligence, having a conversation about what we're seeing and why is it the case that we're seeing it, and how, to Ms. Underwood's point, we can be the leaders in this and be the front runners of having the most inclusive policy.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll look forward to getting that from you in email form, and then if you have specific questions that you can think of that we should put out to students, families, staff, then if you would get those to Mr. Ray, and we'll start hammering through this, and also specific wording that you would like to see. As I know Ms. America just mentioned some, but she also mentioned some other things, as well as Ms. Williams, so I appreciate that as well. So if you can all get back to Mr. Ray. He's the guy who's getting all of the questions tonight, so thank you so much. And thank you all for a great conversation. With that, we're going to move on to J2A, Superintendent's Evaluation. So state statute is very specific about what you can talk about publicly and what can not be talked about publicly. So at this time, I will share a few comments that came out of our, that were included on the evaluation tool. And if others want to speak as well, you can. You don't need to. So clearly any positive comments need to be made at the board table. Any needs improvements can only happen in closed session. And when we come back out of closed session, we will vote on approving the superintendent's evaluation to go in the in his file. And then, as Mr. Scanlon mentioned, we'll be working on getting tweaks and working with legal on contract wording and get that all corrected and done by the August 1 deadline of the state. And so there's a couple different deadlines. We're doing this first because the superintendent's evaluation is required to be given once a year, and in Mr. Evans' case, it has to be before July 1 because of his start time. So I think in looking through the evaluation, I think, and Mr. Scanlon mentioned it tonight as well, one of the many things that was noted was just the appreciation for redistributing, whether it be staff to the executive directors to work on our low achieving schools, our REACH schools, but also just the work that you've done with the executive directors and the appreciation of the accountability that comes with that, and the accountability not only to you and to the board, but also to the community of the schools that those EDs are ultimately overseeing, as well as some of the work that's being done through technology, and just the appreciation for us moving from and I hear it from parents all the time, moving from that era of kind of being a dinosaur with technology to really introducing our students. We have a long ways to go, but we're certainly moving in a great direction on that. And then as well, your dedication to the strategic plan and just working to see the implementation of that process through all your different meetings with the STAT process and the principals, because as I think you said when you first came on board, that can often be a document you put on a shelf. But so we've appreciated the fact that you've stayed focused on that and continued to work on that. So I don't know if anyone else wants to share comments, please feel free to do so. And then again, we will vote on the evaluation after closed session. Ms. Williams.
I just wanted to publicly say, Mr. Evans, you have really made a change in our district. And there's always going to be room for improvement in a district this size, but you've taken something that, for the most part, there was not a lot of transparency, a lot of unhappy community, and as we all just together had our three-year board anniversary, I've seen us have a different culture. We have, sitting at this table today with us, we have some fantastic new hires. We have some, in our audience as well, we have some phenomenal leaders that you have helped bring to our district and create a change. Obviously, Mrs. Kanoki, and we have Mr. Luaru, and we have our EDs and Mr. Dixon, and I could go on and on. Mr. Wakefield and Dr. Turnquist is here with us, elevated to a role that has really implemented some changes. And so I just accredit that to your leadership. I appreciate your willingness to be open and honest through good and rough. And being very clear that your intentions are not about, you have proven to me personally, especially last year, that it's not about dollars. You are truly here to do what's best for kids. Are we better today? You say it all the time, are we better today than we were yesterday? And I believe we absolutely are. And I attribute that to your leadership. So I just want to tell you publicly, thank you. You have made some hard decisions and some tough decisions. But I'm pleased to support you in your role, and I look forward to seeing what the next few years look like with you at the helm of our district.
Anyone else want to share? Don't feel like you, Ms. Sunderwood.
I don't have a whole lot. I do want to mention that I agree with what Ms. Williams said just about. I think it's very clear that Mr. Evans is here for students. I've never seen any indication that, this is really about anything else other than making sure that our students have access to a great education. And that's just come through kind of loud and clear for me. I like also what he's done with providing additional principal support in schools, and what Mr. Evans also did, at the outset with the org structure changes, and then continuing to not necessarily change the org chart, but how providing additional support within the org chart itself and kind of making changes there. He is kind of leading a bit of a cultural change here within OPS, and I like his terminology of you're kind of building the plane as we're flying it. And that's a tough thing to do, and that's especially for a large school district. But I think that he's doing that as well as can be expected. So I appreciate having him here, and I hope he's here a long time.
Great, thanks. Okay, Mr. Scanlon.
I would just say that, looking back over the time that I've spent on this board, there's been a large number of issues that have needed to be addressed, and a lot of them are, sensitive issues that you're going to affect a lot of people's lives, and you're also not just the students, but the stakeholders within OPS. And I would like to say that I'm appreciative of the direction that we're moving in. I guess from the business perspective, a board is supposed to set goals and to set policies that give guidance to the CEO of a company, and in this situation, the CEO is the superintendent, and I think he's made a lot of tough decisions and changes within the organization, but I think he's also empowered a lot of people that when he puts and makes changes to or recommendations to changes within the organization, that he empowers those people that are now in these new positions, and I think that speaks volumes because no one person's going to change the culture of our school district. We're all going to be continually doing our best to make it better, and I've never heard from the administration or from any member of OPS under the new superintendent's leadership that we're there yet, and I think that's huge. I mean, to say we're making great strides is an understatement. We're doing great things. Are we there yet? No. Will we ever get there? Who knows? Those are all things that we can only strive to do. But I think this district is moving in a direction that it would not have moved had it not been for some solid leadership from our superintendent. And politics, personalities, all that aside, I think we're doing a lot better than we had been for a number of years. So thank you for the work you're doing, and I thank fellow board members of the executive committee. Everybody's working and striving to make OPS the best that we can, and I think that's huge. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. America.
I'll be brief. Ditto to what everyone has said so far, but I wanted to add in, I think part of why we're moving in the right direction and we've been able to make improvements is I've noticed kind of systematically you make decisions for a reason. You don't just do something to do something. Like I remember at the end of the school year, I don't know if they hadn't been paying attention, but I had a person who doesn't have children in the district come up and say, well, I didn't see in the paper like where all the principals are moving this year. I asked them what they were talking about. They said, well, you guys move all the principals around because every so often you just move people around. And I was like, no, we don't do that anymore. Like we want our principals involved in the community. When we want them there, and when there is a new principal, we want the community to be involved. And kind of just explaining that process to them, I think it's representative of a lot of things that we've done, where we're looking at why we do things, why we're making changes, not just doing something to do something. And so I know I've greatly appreciated that over the last few years.
All right. Well, thank you very much, and thank you for the work, and really thanks to this board, because you're right, it is our 3-year anniversary, and yeah, it's been a
Wild ride.
It has been it's been quite a ride, but we have accomplished, as I was sharing with the World Herald today, more probably than any other urban districts in the last 3 years. And so I just want to applaud each person on this board for the efforts that they've put forth. With that, we're going to move on to J2B, Capital Facilities Plan Update. Is this Dr. Turnquist?
I think Mr. Ray is going to lead this discussion.
Oh, okay.
Yes, he is.
Okay. That's right, I forgot.
This presentation will not require a cultural shift. We do have some information provided in the board documents that include the template and the capital facilities plan. So the gist of this recommended change is on 2 pages of the capital facility plan, page 3.4, which covers specific alternative programs. And on the template, it outlines specifically what those changes are. Those changes are the removing of the ILP program at Kellum, the removal of Parish from Kellum, the removal of, on that 4th line down, Parish program to Saratoga, and then the addition of Parish to be determined. So those pages match up to 4-22 in the capital facilities plan, which is also included in the meetings, and those changes are the same. The removal of integrated learning program will be relocated to the existing Kellum school, and then the addition of the ILP program going to Saratoga with some language about the changes from the facilities plan that those Saratoga students would go to Druid Hill. The next agenda item covers in depth the recommendation for the Saratoga boundary change, which was also presented to you in April of 2015. So those recommended changes are included in the template, and also included that this was a collaborative effort with many thought partners, which include Curriculum Instruction Assessment, District Operational Services, the FPUC Committee, the SSRR Committee, and the Student Assignment Plan Committee, and any other committee that was brought up as part of it. It's important to note that there's no fiscal impact to the changes in the facility plan. The numbers and dollars do not change as you approved originally in August of 2014. So with that, I bring that forward to you as a recommendation to change the facilities plan as reflected in the template.
And for folks watching at home or following along, that's page 2 of the first document on the board agenda that Mr. Ray just went through. And I think we had a full presentation of that. Was it a year ago? Something like that?
Mr. Schmidt-Bonnie had the pleasure of being in front of the board in April of 2015 with Saratoga information. This is the first time we've talked about it as a whole board with changes to the capital facilities plan.
Okay. All right. Questions from anyone? And I know quite a few people have sat on committees where this has been discussed, but I want to make sure for anyone who hasn't that they can ask questions. Okay. All right. With that, then, if there's no questions, at this time, I would accept a motion to approve the changes to the capital facilities plan.
So moved.
So, motion by Ms. Williams. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Mrs. Underwood. Is there any discussion related to that motion? Okay, hearing none. Roll call, please.
America?
Aye.
Scanlon?
Aye.
Underwood?
Aye.
Vargas?
Aye.
Wayne?
Aye.
Williams?
Aye.
Fay?
Aye.
Goddard?
Aye.
8 ayes.
Motion carries. All right, the next item is J2C, boundary changes for the repurposing of Saratoga Elementary as the Integrated Learning Program, ILP, for the 2017-18 school year. And so research is going to, I couldn't remember where we were at. So Casey, is it the last document?
We'll look at all of them.
Okay.
Well, we'll look, not the first one, but
Okay.
the presentation template, I'll kind of go off of that. And then the 2 maps we'll look at are just the middle school and elementary boundaries as we go through those. So what we're coming today to talk about is, as Matt suggested, a boundary change for Saratoga, specifically to accommodate the movement of ILP to Saratoga, changing the boundaries of Lothrop and Skinner Elementary School, as well as to some degree King Science Center and McMillan Magnet Middle Schools to accommodate grade configuration changes associated with that middle school change. The original boundary recommendation, let me open this map real quick. The original recommendation suggested that the entirety of the Saratoga area would go to Druid Hill. As we looked at that possibility, Druid Hill, the capacity of the school and the location of it on the opposite side of the North Freeway, or the west side of the North Freeway, made it kind of a weak candidate to accept all of the Saratoga attendance area as described in the capital plan. Lothrop, being just south of the current Saratoga attendance area and being on the same side of the North Freeway, not having that barrier, suggested a pretty good location for at least some of the population of Saratoga, although it could not handle the entirety of that school's attendance area or enrollment. Skinner, being a school that is also west of the freeway, but in general connected to Saratoga, has a lot of space and provided a good opportunity for those additional students to transition from Saratoga into the Skinner attendance area. So specifically, the areas that are south of Ames Avenue and east of the North Freeway in green would transition to Lothrop for K4 and King Science for 5 through 8. That encompasses the unit zones of 22012 through 22018, and additionally the alignment of Lothrop K4 and King Science 5-8 is to align the entirety of the Lothrop attendance area to King Science, so you have a K4 5-8 scenario for all of those students. The students in the Saratoga area north of Ames Avenue and west of the Kennedy Freeway in this situation would transition to Skinner for grades K5 and would stay at McMillan for grades 6 through 8. So there'd be no change to the middle school for those students. Those students are currently in the McMillan middle school attendance area, and so that would remain. This would also come along with the removal of the shared middle school attendance area between McMillan and King Science. Currently, of the unit zones 22013 through 18, students have the ability to attend Saratoga at 5th and 6th grade or attend King Science at 5th and 6th grade. And then at 7th and 8th grade, they can attend King Science or go to McMillan. This recommendation would remove that shared area and put all those students into King Science along with the rest of the Lothrop attendance area. Additionally, it would add one unit zone that is also south of Ames, 22012. That would move from entirely being in the McMillan attendance area to being in the King Science attendance area. As Mr. Ray suggested, there's been a number of committees that this has gone through. Facility Planning and Utilization Committee, I won't use the acronym as Mr. Ray did. Executive Council, Executive Directors, Student Assignment Plan Committee, Student Assignment Plan Board Committee. It went to Parent Community at Saratoga in September of 2015. It went to the staff at Saratoga at the building in 2015, and additionally, as Mr. Ray suggested, to the Board of Education in April of 2015. So the fiscal impact of this change would be minimal for the 2017-18 school year. There would be some associated with the moving of materials from Saratoga to both Skinner and Lothrop. Additionally, potentially some changes or materials to King Science. There will be an expenditure associated with the ILP at Saratoga, the moving of those materials and making that building ready. But that dollar amount, I believe, was identified in the bond already for Saratoga. The FTE impacts or the teacher impacts should be very minimal. The students that will be moving to Lothrop and Skinner would be followed by the teaching staff at Saratoga. I know that HR will be working with the staff members, I believe in November, to work through that process. So if this is approved, we will take this information and begin additional community engagement to inform families and the school about these boundary changes. And we'll also have the Office of School Community and Family Engagement and Student Placement work with individual families to work through this transition process. Be an individual process. We have not reached out to those families that would potentially be losing transportation under the new student assignment plan from the Saratoga area. We've specifically left those families off of our current communications so we could contact them specifically about this change. So there wasn't confusion between this boundary change and the student assignment plan changes for 2017-18. And specifically the numbers of students moving. King Science could expect as many as 20 additional students to enroll in 2017-18. These students would have in the past potentially enrolled in McMillan or stayed at Saratoga for 5th grade. Overall, the King Science area would gain about 72 students in grades 5 through 8. Although about 40% of these students, if you'll remember, are in that shared area, so they're already attending King Science. So it's not moving all of those students, just kind of half of them that would have made that choice to McMillan in the past. That would bring the home attendance area population for that school up to about 284 students. King's a very small middle school home attendance area. The capacity of that building is about 950 students, so it's much below the rated capacity for that school. Lothrop would have as many as 54 additional students enroll in 2017-18. Overall, the attendance area would gain is about 95 students in grades K through 4, and that would bring the home attendance area up to about 375 students, just below the rated capacity of 405 for that building. And Skinner would add about 100 students that would enroll in 2017-18. Now, about 40 of these students are students that are not in the home attendance area of Saratoga, Lothrop, or Skinner today. They're optioning into Saratoga, and so they'd be given a place at Skinner if they would like, or they'd have the option of going back to their home attendance area school, or they could obviously enter the student selection process and apply to go to another school in January of 2017. Additionally, any of the students that would be moved in this process based on their home attendance area change would also have the ability to go through that school selection process and apply as well. So with that, I will show you the middle school map just briefly if you haven't looked at it already, and I'll answer any questions that you might have. So again, it looks very similar to the previous map. The area in blue or in green here is the current shared area. This 1 unit zone 22012 is the area that's currently McMillan's attendance area that would go to King Science. The rest of these in green are currently the shared area for McMillan and King Science and would just be King Science in the future with no option to go to McMillan as a shared area or a guaranteed option.
Okay, does anyone have any questions from any of the committee members who have heard this, or from Casey, from research, or any staff? All right, so the motion is rather long. So with that, I would entertain a motion to approve the elementary boundaries for Lothrop and Skinner be expanded for the 2017-18 school year to accommodate the repurposing of Saratoga. Additionally, the boundaries of McMillan Middle and King Science Middle should be adjusted to align feeder patterns and grade level configurations associated with the new elementary boundaries.
So moved.
So motion by Ms. Williams. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Mrs. Underwood. Okay. Any discussion on the motion itself? Ms. Williams.
I just wanted to take a moment to thank staff, especially research, for getting all this information disseminated to all of us on different committees and regurgitating that same conversation many, many times. As Saratoga is a school in my sub-district, and it's very close to my heart, I just appreciate being very thoughtful of the students and the families, and again, travel-wise and considering just the environment that some of those students are walking across, and just being very mindful of that recommendation for those families. So I just want to publicly thank you for your work.
Very good. Okay. With that, if there's no other comments, then roll call, please, Mr. Ray.
Scanlon?
Aye.
Underwood?
Aye.
Vargas?
Aye.
Wayne? Williams?
Aye.
Fay?
Aye.
Gadding?
Aye.
America?
Aye.
8 aye.
Okay, motion carries. All right, with that, we will, if I can get back, we will move to the last action item, which is J2D, bid number 036, bus cameras for district-owned vehicles. And I know we heard a public comment, as I mentioned earlier, on this one. So, Dr. Turnquist.
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Gadding. I'd like to ask Mr. Travis Salas, Director of Transportation, to come forward to answer any questions that board members may have on this. In addition to the write-up that is in the agenda, you also have had access to the template explaining the analysis that went forward on this particular bid.
Well, I guess I would just ask the question, because I think the question related to the blurring of faces, correct? Of those, so if you're focusing in on a student, and we want to make sure the privacy of all other students on the bus are, is maintained. So the question is, was the blurring equipment the reason for the decision to go with Gatekeeper over REI, which isn't the local company?
Okay. What we did is, no, that was not the only reason, but it was it weighed very heavily when we were looking at different criterias. What we did is back in March when we sent out the bid openings, we received response from 6 different vendors. We took the top 3 vendors that were the low bid that met the specifications. After getting established in those 3, what we did was ran a 2-week demonstration. And this included putting a camera from each one of the vendors on one of our special education buses. And we ran it for 2 weeks. And basically what we did is kind of put together a sheet, and we looked at various different criteria, such as the quality of the vault, the audio, the picture quality, the security feature, where the cameras were positioned on the bus, how well did they play. Those were some of the criterias we looked at, and we kind of rated each one from each respective vendor. REI, in terms of the whole criteria, did come in second place. In terms of the low bid, I think that was mentioned earlier, of the 3, Sentinel was the low bid, but it did not meet the specifications. Out of all 3 of them, Gatekeeper was the only one that met that security function. That is a very important function in this day and age in terms of the safety for our students. Currently on our regular ed buses, we have cameras, and they do have the ability to blur out a student's face. But the problem we're running into is when people request, whether it be law enforcement or attorney, or we receive a subpoena, when the blur goes over the face, it's static. So a lot of times when kids are riding on the bus and you put a blur on it, when they're reviewing it, if a kid does like this or gets out of the seat or moves around, then you no longer have that security or the privacy of that student for their family. So we requested in our RFP that the viewer software must have the ability to track the subject or shadow it. So not only just blurring it out, but if that student or students were to move, it would have the ability to move with it. And at this time, Gatekeeper was the only one that met that. Now, we did put that as a requirement, and when we did looked at the initial bids, they all said yes, it was a requirement, but that's why we put that extra step in of the demonstration. So when we went to the demonstration phase of it, again, Gatekeeper was the only one that could do it.
And I think the other question was related to financial stability, and did we look at the financial stability of?
Switch sides with you. Jim Strobel, purchasing manager, and I was one that put the bid together. One of the things that we do is we request financial information on our bigger bids to protect the district. And what I mean by protect the district is make sure the company is sound and can handle the business that we want to do with them. Would not be fair to just run into a business and give them a gigantic contract. In this case, we did not open the financials on it. They come in sealed in the bid package. If they are open, they are reviewed by legal counsel to determine where the company's true financials are. In this case, we looked at a major player in the industry, somebody that none of our references gave any issues to, and one that we have heard of no problems with. So those were not open in this case.
Does anyone else have any questions? So I'm just processing through that. Does anyone else have any questions? Ms. Marico?
Maybe just a clarification question. So with the track shadow difference, is it a difference between one being you select the student and it follows them for that individual for the remainder of the video versus having someone go frame by frame and blurring the student?
What you would have to do with it currently is once you get the video, you would be able to go back, review the video. You would put the blur functionality piece over that student, and it kind of, you lead it, the blur piece, based off of what you've watched on the camera. You would have to review the camera, then you lead the blur, and then you push play, and it would go back, and the blur would follow the student to wherever the direction would be. So it's not a thing that any of the cameras can just put. For example, if you watch the news, even when they show a face being blurred, they have to review the whole tape footage and then they put it on it and it kind of follows it. With this camera, we would have almost, if you would circle the direction, if I was to walk 10 feet forward, you would circle my face now and then do a blur 10 feet forward, and it would show me walking with the blur 10 feet.
So essentially face recognition that then blurs. Is that what you're saying?
The face recognition you blur, but you have to lead where the blur is going. Yes, you would draw it out based off of reviewing the video where the blur would go, and it would follow it.
But the one you're requesting us to purchase, you wouldn't have to do that. You would have to do that.
No, you would. That's the only functionality that out of all the three, what we have right now is just a blur. It would not move from the other two vendors. It would just stay static. This one's the only one that it does move, have the capability of moving.
That's okay. That's good clarification. And you did not review the financials, is what you just said.
No, we did not on this one.
We did have the opportunity to also check the references. We had a reference as big as from Clark County School District, which has 1,500 buses in their fleet. They did a order just within the year for additional 350 cameras on their bus. We also did a reference check with Springfield School District in Springfield, Missouri, as well as Apple Valley in Apple Valley, California.
And can you just tell us, so this is the purchase for the cameras for our special ed?
For the special ed buses. Yes.
And what is the life of one of these cameras?
It would be the lifetime, the warranty piece would be for 5 years.
Okay. All right. Dr. Turnquist.
Mrs. Gotti, if there is a concern, we can pull this for tonight, and we can have legal counsel review the financial statements of all of the three low bidders and bring it back.
So, Ms. Williams.
So just, Dr. Turnquist, if we decided to do that, I guess my question is, how soon do we need this to get these cameras, to get them on buses and ready for the upcoming school year? Or Mr. Salas?
Right now, it was pushed back from the last board meeting, so we're behind a month on it. It would be pushing it pretty close to get them on for the beginning of the school year. It would be pushing it pretty close.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any thoughts on that? Mr. Scanlon.
Since it's been brought up, I would prefer to have the financials reviewed, financial stability reviewed before I made a decision. I know that would be pressing time-wise, but I think it's due diligence to make sure that something that's been brought up to the board, that we do investigate it.
Mrs. Fay.
I have a question just related to what Mr. Scanlon just said, really maybe for you, Mrs. Scotting. If we do that and they have no concerns are raised, nothing jumps out at you from the financial statements, can it be on the consent agenda then for that workshop?
Yes, we were just, Ms. Williams just asked me that question as well, so it could be on the July 11th. consent
And
agenda.
thank you, Mrs. Fay. I was just going to ask that question also.
Yeah, it can be, and I guess I'm with Mr. Scanlon. I've had that same question asked of me, and I just want to make sure that we've done our due diligence, and now finding out we didn't review the financials, I just want to make sure we're not making a big purchase that, we assume that this company is financially stable, so I don't want to give anybody the idea that they aren't, but so is there, okay. Seems like that's where we're at, so thank you. Thank you so much.
Do we need a motion to table it until the July 11th meeting, or what, I guess procedurally, what do we need to do?
I don't know where legal counsel went. I think we can just, would you feel good to postpone? Would you feel good to make a motion to postpone J2D to be on, the recommendation from staff to be on consent on the July 11th, which is a date-specific meeting?
I would be okay with that pending that they reviewed the financials that we had talked about.
So is that your motion?
Yes.
So a motion for Mr. Scanlon
Second.
that staff review, and a second from Ms. Williams that staff review the financial statements, and that the item reappear on the July 11th consent agenda. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please, Mr. Wright.
Underwood.
Aye.
Vargas.
Aye.
Wayne. Williams.
Aye.
Fay.
Aye.
Goding.
Aye.
America.
Aye.
Scanlon.
Aye.
8 aye.
Okay, motion carries. All right. With that, I think we did not have any received reports, so I'll call on Ms. Williams.
I move that the Board of Education go into closed session for the protection of the public interest and for the prevention of needless injury to the reputation of individuals to discuss with the superintendent, secretary to the board, legal counsel, Dr. Turnquist, Pam Cohn, Mark Warnke, Connie Kanoki, and Charles Wakefield, pending litigation, real estate, negotiations, superintendent evaluation, personnel, and legal advice.
Is there a second?
Second.
So motion by Ms. Williams, second by Ms. Merica. Roll call, please.
Vargas.
Aye.
Wayne.
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Fay.
Aye.
Goding.
Aye.
America.
Aye.
Scanlon. Underwood.
Aye.
7 aye.
Motion carries. Let me remind the board that the purpose for closed session is for the protection of the public interest and for the prevention of needless injury to the reputation of individuals, to discuss with the superintendent, secretary to the board, legal counsel, Dr. Turnquist, Pam Cohen, Charles Wakefield, and Connie Kanoki, and Mark Warnke, pending litigation, real estate, negotiations, superintendent evaluation, personnel, and legal advice. Let the record reflect that the board went into closed session at 9:10 p.m.